The Tale of Peter Rabbit. The Tale of Peter Rabbit. What kind of face does a rabbit make? Can you show me? I don't really know. Do it again? So, like that's a rabbit? Oh, okay. Well, funny that you mentioned that. I think I have a bunny friend who would want to read this book to you a lot more than me, so I'm gonna go find my hoppy pal and I'll be right back. Hi everybody, my name's Hoppy the Hoppy Rabbit. Hoppy because I like to hop, and hoppy because I'm always happy. So, my friend Athena brought me this book that I thought that you would like for me to read to you instead of her. She kept talking about tea and being thirsty, so I decided to take over for her instead. You ready for some fun? Are you ready for some hoppy fun? All right, here we go. The Tale of Peter Rabbit. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sink bank underneath the root of a very big fir tree. Not fir tree, fir tree. At least that's what it says, kids. Now, my dears, said old Mrs. Rabbit one morning, you may go into the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put in a pie by Mr. McGregor. That's some accident, folks. Now run along and don't get into mischief. I'm going out. Then old Mrs. Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the woods to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries. I actually know another lovely book story time reader named Blackberry. It's interesting. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. First, he ate some lettuce and some French beans, and then he ate some radishes. It's good to eat your vegetables. If you're a hearty, happy rabbit like myself, you eat lots of carrots and they're good for your eyes. And then, feeling rather sick, he went to look for some parsley to calm his tummy. But round the end of a cucumber fence, whom should he meet but Mr. McGregor? Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees planting some young cabbages, but he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake around and calling out, "Stop, thief!" Since, you know, Peter the Rabbit was eating somebody else's vegetables that he didn't put there, so that's not good. You're not supposed to take things that aren't yours. Peter was most dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. He lost one of his shoes among the cabbages, and the other shoe amongst the potatoes. After losing them, he ran on 4 legs and went faster, so that I think he might have gone away altogether if he had not unfortunately ran into a gooseberry net and got caught by the large buttons on his jacket. It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, quite new. Oh no, his mom just got him a brand new jacket and he just broke the buttons off. That's not a good day. Peter gave himself up for lost and shed big tears, but his sobs were overheard by some friendly sparrows who flew to him in great excitement and explored him and exhorted him. Mr. McGregor came up with a basket, guys, which he intended to pop onto the top of Peter. Peter wiggled out of it just in time, leaving his jacket behind him. Oh no. And rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a can. It would have been a beautiful thing to hide in if it had not had so much water in it. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hiding underneath the flower pot. He began to turn over carefully, looking under each. Presently, Peter sneezed. Ka-choo! Mr. McGregor was after him in no time. And tried to put his foot into Peter. Put his foot right into him, just kick him out of the shed. Who jumped out of the window, upsetting 3 plants. The window was too small for Mr. McGregor, and he was tired of running after Peter. He went back to his work. Peter sat down to rest. He was out of breath and trembling with fright, and he had not the least bit idea which way to go. Also, he was very damp with sitting in the can. After a time, he began to wonder about going lippity-lippity, not very fast, and looking all around. He found a door in a wall, but it was locked, and there was no room for a fat little rabbit to squeeze underneath. An old mouse was running in and out over the stone doorstep, carrying peas and beans to his family in the wood. Peter asked her the way to the gate, but she had such a large pea in her mouth, she could not answer. She only shook her head at him. Peter began to cry. Then he tried to find his way straight across the garden, but he became more and more puzzled. Presently, he came to a pond where Mr. McGregor filled his water cans. A white cat was staring at some goldfish. She sat very, very still. But now and then, the tip of her tail twitched as if it were alive. Well, the tip of her tail is alive, kids, I'll tell you. Peter thought it best to go away without speaking to her. He had heard about cats from his cousin, little Benjamin Bunny. He went back towards the tool shed, but suddenly, quite close to him, he heard the noise of a hoe. Scratch, 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 screech. Peter scuttered underneath the bushes. But presently, as nothing happened, he came out and climbed into the wheelbarrow and peeped over. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor hoeing onions. His back was turned towards Peter, and beyond him was the gate. Peter got down very quietly off the wheelbarrow and started running as fast as he could along a straight walk behind him, behind some black curtain bushes. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him at the corner, but Peter did not care. He slipped underneath the gate and was safe at last in the wood outside the garden. Finally, I was getting very nervous, everybody. Let's be clear. I didn't think Mr. Peter Rabbit was going to get out of Mr. McGregor's garden. Mr. McGregor hung up the little jacket and those shoes for a scarecrow to frighten the blackbirds. Peter never stopped running or looked behind him till he got home to the big fir tree. He was so tired that he flopped down upon the nice soft sand on the floor of the rabbit hole and shut his eyes. His mother was busy cooking. She wondered what he had done with his clothes. It was the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter had lost in a fortnight. I am sorry to say that Peter was not very well during the evening. His mother put him to bed and made him some chamomile tea, and she gave a dose of it to Peter. 1 tablespoonful to be taken at bedtime. But Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail had bread, milk, and blackberries for supper. The end. So, what this little bunny gathered from this story was Peter Rabbit did what his mommy told him not to do, and he got in trouble for it by only getting a spoonful of chamomile for dinner instead of the yummy blackberries and everything else like his brothers and sisters. So, the lesson to be learned from this is listen to your mommy and daddy so you won't get in trouble. Hopsy out!